Ahmed Bayram, and he is the Regional Media Manager for the Middle East and Eastern Europe for Save the Children. Welcome to the programme. Now, what I really want to speak to you about is, your organisation recently published the following. It revealed that children as young as 5 in Lebanon are being forced onto the streets. Tell us more about this. Yeah, good evening. Actually, this particular case came to us from one of the parents that I spoke to last week about the problem, and he was telling me how every morning his 5-year-old girl opens the door and goes out to collect scrap metal and plastics. She doesn't come back until she has brought with her the price of a bag of bread, which, as I speak to you, keeps rising, by the way. This is a problem. This is a struggle that almost every family in Lebanon is now thinking of or living day to day. These people are skipping meals. People tell me that they eat every other meal. There's no 3 meals a day anymore. Children don't eat the healthy food and nutritious food that they need, and families simply cannot afford the price of basics, as you say, as you spoke about in your report. The price of bread, the price of cheese, the price of block of cheese, the price of any basics. I have spoken to families who have told me that they are now mixing thyme and water instead of oil. This is the reality that now people are living with in Lebanon. It's very sad indeed. And who are these children? And I think my question is this: are these children from families who in the past would not have had to send their children to the streets? Yes. Yes. I mean, the crisis, I mean, we talk about political, we talk about economic crisis in Lebanon, but this is very much a child crisis in Lebanon. I have spoken to people who used to be architects, who were on, constant, stable wage, who tell me now they cannot afford vaccination for their babies, for their newborns. We're not talking about people who are, we're not only talking about people who were already in poverty. We are talking about people who are now wiped out from the middle class, or what used to be the middle class, and now have lost their job, have lost their income, and now relying more and more on aid. We're talking about people who are now going down the scale, going down the social stability that they have felt for years. We're talking about people who are qualified to take a job, high skilled, families who are, who used to own a car or used to own a business. And at the same time, people who were already in poverty, imagine what it is like for them now. Imagine people who already couldn't afford the price of basics, of new clothes, or new food, nutritious food for their children. These people are now struggling even more. So we're talking about a crisis that have now spread in scale, in demographic distribution, in geographic distribution, that has now touched almost every middle class and below class in Lebanon. So we're talking about a crisis at a scale that we have never seen before. And I hear from my colleagues in the field about families, they are not used to this. Indeed. And Ahmed, sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to know, what are the risks for these children? You call this a disaster for children. It is a disaster for children, and action needs to be taken. We cannot wait for the international community to wait for a new government to be formed. We've been talking about this for a year, and action has to be taken now, because we are now risking a whole generation of children in Lebanon. We're talking about not just an education crisis, not just a food crisis, not just a power crisis. We're talking about a social disaster that is waiting these children if they are not saved. And the international community has the obligation to support these people through fairly distributed, through transparent packages that reach the most in need, that reach the most vulnerable. We cannot wait for a political solution. I mean, we've been talking about this for a year, and this is obviously not our mandate. Our mandate is to support these children. This is a crisis for every child in Lebanon. And if we wait anymore, we are losing. We are actually already, unfortunately, we spoke about this a year before. We warned that by the end of last year, if this crisis continues, children will die because they go hungry. And we say the same again. Children will risk their lives, will risk their very survival if the crisis is not being dealt with. And if we continue this game of waiting and waiting and waiting, we are losing these children, unfortunately.
It's very grim indeed, and a very sad situation. I read today that it's very possible that there will be no government in Lebanon before next May. Thank you so much, Ahmed Bayram from Save the Children.